Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of Catherine Lorimer's Guide to Life podcast. Okay, so usually I kind of like do like a ghosty thing, don't I? And we all kind of, it's like usually based on a real story. But I thought, as it's Christmas, I should have written a Christmas ghost story, okay? But hey, I've got this one in my hand. I didn't really think about that at the time, but I've written a bit of a ghost story, okay? It's not a Christmas one, sorry guys, but it is a ghost story that I've written. But it is based, like all the stuff that I do, okay, is based on true events or things that have actually happened to me, okay? And I'll tell you the real kind of ghosty story that did actually happen after I've read the story. Okay, so it's called The Accident, right? Ah, Emma cried as the young, athletic, ebony black horse that she was riding bounced, then bronked, chucking her off in the direction of the arena fence. She landed with a heavy thud before sliding down the burnt umber timber-railed fence, ending up sat upright, her legs out straight, and her brown suede riding boots covered in arena sand. She unclipped her black riding hat and pulled it off. Her blonde curls fell out, steam erupting from her head. "Are you okay?" her trainer called to her, while walking across the sand to get hold of the horse, which had become to a halt at the gate, looking in the direction of the stable block eagerly. "Just about," she replied. Using the fence, she pulled herself up, then dusted herself down. She'd landed with a thud, and she was glad that she had worn her body protector, which she then unzipped and took off. "Ooh," she cried, as there was a sudden pain in the right side of her lower back as she slid her body protector off. "Are you sure you're okay?" asked the trainer again. "You landed quite heavily on that rail." "Yes, I'm sure I'll be fine." "I'm not sure you should get back on though, but you can't let her get away with that behaviour, so I'll just hop on her and get her going," her trainer said. Emma watched her trainer from the centre of the arena, in awe of how he was riding the black warm blood. The horse almost glided across the menage, hooves looking like they hardly touched the surface. And Emma thought to herself, realistically, was she ever going to be able to ride like that? And she kind of wondered, should she just sell this warm blood and buy a nice sensible cob to ride instead? This was the second time that she'd come off this horse this week. The horse behaved perfectly for her trainer, so he only rode her for another 10 minutes or so. He brought her to a standstill, then hopped off her. "You will click with her eventually, I'm sure. You just need to keep at it," he told her. Emma smiled to reply back at him, but without really feeling the same confidence that her trainer had. They led the horse up to the stable block, untacked the horse, sponged her down, putting on a breathable stable rug, then left the mare eating her hay net. "I'll feed her for you in a bit when she's cooled off," her trainer said. "Great, thanks," replied Emma. And Emma carried the horse's tack up towards the old stone whitewashed wall farmhouse, trying to ignore the now dull ache that she was feeling in her lower back as she walked. She was also now feeling a little bit unwell. She shrugged it off as post-fall adrenaline loss. With her tack safely stored in the tack room, she said her goodbyes and got into her little cherry red MX-5. Wincing as she sat down though, and leaning in towards the steering wheel to try and stretch her back out. She was going to be really sore tomorrow, she thought. But she had a party to go to tonight. It was her director's birthday, and she couldn't miss it. She'd been really looking forward to it all week. She loved this kind of thing. It was an opportunity to mingle and chat to people who she'd never met before. She was really interesting, exchanging life stories. But strangely, she didn't really feel like going anymore. But she'd already sent her RSVP in, so she would go, but abandoned the idea of getting an Uber because she didn't really feel like drinking, so she thought, I'll just drive instead. Emma headed home to her small apartment, where she showered and changed. There was no sign of external bruising on her back, but it was really, really sore, and she kind of wondered should she be worried about internal bleeding as she headed to her car, but dismissed the thought. She put the postcode into her car sat-nav, and she headed off to the old stone country cottage, which was located in a small Welsh village. She arrived 20 minutes later and was welcomed into the kitchen. It was a really lovely house that had been so well finished inside, and the kitchen was just beautiful. Old flagstone floors, solid wood cabinets, a Belfast sink, and a giant cream auger, which had a variety of pots with things bubbling away on it. And the smell was sensational. And it had a lovely, warm, cosy feeling to it, just how a farmhouse kitchen should be. Em was pointed in the direction of the homemade bar, where she helped herself to a sparkling elderflower water. It would look like wine, so no one would question her not driving, which was really unusual for her. She really was starting to feel a little bit queasy now as well. She said hello to various work colleagues who were all in the cottage garden area. Her director was a big, keen gardener, and it shone through in his garden, and the hostas were particularly impressive. Emma chatted to a couple that she didn't really know. Normally, it would have been a conversation that she would have enjoyed, but she was unusually quiet, and one of the women of the couple asked Emma if she was okay, because she said she looked a bit pale. And Emma didn't feel okay at all now, and her breathing was a bit laboured, and she was concerned that there might be something really wrong with her. Little did she know that she had burst a blood vessel in her lung, and one side was slowly filling up with blood. Emma left a short while later. Staying for a couple of hours would be seen as acceptable. She managed to drive herself home and parallel park her car with some effort. She dragged herself out of her car somehow, grunting and groaning a bit as she did. And her next-door neighbour was out, and he saw her, and she knew him quite well, and he saw her struggling, and he shouted across, "Hey Emma, is everything okay?" "I fell off my horse earlier, and I thought I was okay, but now I'm not so sure. I don't feel great, and I have a pain in my lower back," she told him. "Look, I don't mean to be kind of like alarming, but you don't look or sound that great." And he was clearly worried about her, and he added, "Look, I can drive you to the local A&E if you want me to." Emma had a real dislike of hospitals. Even the smell of them made her feel quite queasy. But she thought she probably should take him up on the offer. "Do you know, if you don't mind," she replied, "you don't have to stay with me, but just a lift would be great." Her neighbour dropped her off at the dropping point of her local A&E hospital, and she walked very slowly towards the door, struggling with every step, suddenly aware that she was now finding it hard to breathe. She saw an empty wheelchair and kind of collapsed into it, and she later remembered someone pushing her to the reception desk, where she managed to give her details and a brief description of what happened and her symptoms. She was feeling really dizzy, and she nearly fell out of the wheelchair, so she was rushed around to an emergency area. She was quickly x-rayed and told that her lung had filled up with blood. She was attached to an ECG machine to check her heart, which was thankfully okay. But surprisingly, she didn't panic. She remained really calm. She supposed that was because of a consequence of working with horses, which taught you just to stay calm so they don't react to your behaviour. She was then taken into an emergency surgical room where she had an emergency chest drain inserted into her, out of which poured a large amount of blood. And she was stabilised and sent up to a surgical ward where she was put on hourly observations. And she remembered being woken up every hour to have her BP and temperature taken. On her overnight stay in the surgical ward 42, Emma couldn't quite remember at which point in the night another patient started talking to her. And that patient was Jane, who had come and sat on her bed. Emma first remembered Jane holding her hand and touching her forehead. She must have had a temperature because Jane's hand felt cold to the touch. At some point in the early hours of the morning, Jane started quietly chatting to her, asking what had happened, and Emma told Jane all about the accident and what she could remember. "What are you doing here?" asked Emma. "I've been here a while," replied Jane. "I think that I might have some kind of cancer, but they're not really sure. she replied, looking down at the floor. Oh no, I'm sorry. What sort of cancer do you think you have? Asked Emma. Well, my stomach has swollen up. Emma pointed to her balloon-like stomach, not really answering Emma's question. They're doing lots of tests on me. I keep being sick all the time, but they say I can't have cancer because I'm too young. Emma really felt for Jane. She looked so pale and frail and ill. She had long, fine nutmeg hair, which was pulled back loosely behind her face and held in place with a clip. She had a pink and blue checkered button-up pyjamas on. Her cheekbones were really prominent, as was her forehead. I've been like this for a while, continued Jane. I kept going to the doctors and being told it was flu or gastroenteritis. I went again a few weeks ago because this time the stomach pain was just so intense. And it's been unbearable. And this time they said it might be appendicitis, so they admitted me. Your stomach, it is swollen up though, asked Emma. Yes, I'm bloated, they're now saying, and I've lost 3 stone in the last couple of months. That's a lot of weight for you to lose, replied Emma, thinking that at 3 stone heavier, Jane would still have looked slightly underweight. She suddenly thought maybe she should try and take Jane's mind off the current situation. What do you do? Asked Emma. I'm a dance student at the Hammond School. Wow, that's amazing. Do you want to be a professional dancer? Yes, I hope to be able to do ballet. I was Princess Odette in Swan Lake last year. Emma, having no clue about ballet, apart from her mother having dragged her to a couple of ballet lessons at the local village hall when she was about 7, which she hated, having no balance or coordination, added, That sounds amazing. I was hopeless at ballet, 2 left feet. My balance was so bad that I fell over, and Emma and Jane both laughed. Do you have a boyfriend? Jane asked. Not at the moment. How about you? Yes, I do. But we have to keep it quiet, though. He works at a local farm up the road from my school. I met him while I was on a walk one day. He just started chatting to me. He was in the road calling the farm dog, who had run out to say hello to me. His name's Tim. He has large blue eyes, floppy brown hair, and a really nice smile. And when he found out that I was in here, he brought me flowers. She pointed to the large purple vase, bursting with an array of different coloured flowers that was on the night cabinet next to her bed. They're stunning. You are very lucky, Jane smiled a reply at Jane. My parents would not be happy if they knew. They keep introducing me to sons of theirs, friends, and they all seem like emotionless idiots. But Tim isn't like that. He was in tears the other day telling me about a calf that had died shortly after it had been born, and he was so upset not to be able to save it. He said God always takes the best ones back. Their conversation was disturbed by a noise outside the door. They'll be coming to do my obs again, and I'm feeling a little bit tired. Do you mind if we chat again tomorrow? Emma asked Jane. Jane looked at Emma a bit strangely, but then nodded her head and went back to lie down on her own bed. She was so light she hardly made a dent in the covers, Emma noticed. The nurse came in and did Emma's obs. And when she finished, Emma was so tired she could hardly keep her eyes open, and she fell back into a deep sleep. The morphine pump next to her finally starting to take effect again. She woke the next morning, feeling stiff and a bit sore. And she glanced over to Jane's bed, eager to see how her new friend was feeling. And she noticed that it was empty and the flowers were gone. The nurse came in to do her obs again in the morning. Where's Jane? Emma asked. Jane? The nurse inquired. Yes, Jane, the girl in the next bed. She chatted to me for quite a while last night. The nurse said, looking as though she didn't really know what to say. There was a Jane on this ward, but I'm sorry to say that she died about 30 minutes before you were brought up here. Did she have stomach cancer? The nurse looked shocked. I'm sorry, I can't discuss another patient's medical condition with you?" Emma could see the nurse looked visibly shaken by their conversation. She heard a noise outside the ward door, and she saw a young man with brown floppy hair looking at Jane's bed. Emma could see the tears rolling down his face. A cold chill ran through Emma, and her whole body became covered in goosebumps. The realization that she would not be able to continue her conversation or her friendship with Jane, as she has not really been here at all. So I hope you enjoy that little ghost story, okay? Please let me know what you think of it, because it's the first thing that I've kind of written and then read out on the radio, so let me know. So just to give you kind of like, as I say, everything I do, it's based on real life experiences. So just to give you the contents of that, okay? The accident, that all happened, that was me. It actually went on for about 3 or 4 days because I had a few parties to go to, and I ended up losing 4 pints of blood all over the A&E floor, which is ironically just around the corner from where I currently work now. So I kind of, that hospital that I'm working in gets a bit of a bad press, but actually it saved my life. And I feel like I'm giving something back now by working there, and it's quite a special feeling. Actually, it's great. So what happened when that happened to me? I was put on hourly obs. I can't remember which ward I was actually on. I just made up that ward number. But I remember at some point during the evening, overnight, I remember a male kind of surgeon. And I can still see his face now. And he was not from this time, from the 60s. And he had like brown hair and a crazy sort of moustachey thing going on. And he was sat on my bed watching over me, like a consultant would do, just watching me through the night. I don't know anybody of that description. And I didn't know who he was. I don't even know if there are any sightings of anybody like that in the hospital. But so that was something that actually happened to me. That was a real thing. And I can still see his face now. And if I saw a picture of him, I'd probably recognise him. And in fact, it can't be, because that hospital, it's not even that old. So I don't even know what was there before on that site. Or who it was. I don't know. I don't have any explanation for that. I've had morphine before and since, just in case you're thinking that was a trigger. Had morphine when I had my broken leg, and I didn't see anything then. Okay, it was just that one particular time. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed that. I'm quite excited, as I say, so to put that out there. That's the first thing that I've ever written, which is great. So thanks very much for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you next time.